I can still remember the shimmer of the champagne glasses and the smell of polished mahogany as if it were a scene etched into crystal. The conference room was buzzing with forced excitement, the kind that simmers just below surface-level civility. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, my heart pounding in quiet rhythm against my ribs, waiting for the announcement I thought was already mine. 3 years. That's how long I had waited, worked, sacrificed. 60-hour weeks, missed family events, late nights replying to emails while eating takeout dinners alone. I built the regional operations team from scratch, 12 people when I started, 47 when I walked into that room. My performance reviews were stellar, my name consistently floated as the future. Arthur, my father-in-law and the company's CEO, had told me himself, this role is just a formality at this point. So when he stood at the front of the room that afternoon, smiling his polished, executive smile, I let myself believe. For once, I let myself feel proud. Everyone, if I could have your attention, Arthur said, raising his glass. The room hushed like a theater before curtain call. It's my great pleasure to announce our new regional director, someone with vision, tenacity, and fresh insight. Please congratulate my niece, Lily Monroe. The world didn't slow down. It didn't crash or explode. It just froze. My breath caught somewhere between my ribs and my throat. Lily? I blinked, certain I had heard wrong. But the applause around me confirmed it. Everyone clapped, some enthusiastically, others politely. I sat frozen. Lily had been at the company 8 weeks. Fresh out of business school. Shiny, blonde, and glowing in a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. I forced a smile, one that felt like it didn't belong to my face, and joined the applause. Slowly. Deliberately. Hollowly. Arthur's eyes met mine across the table for half a second. There was something in his expression, regret, maybe, or guilt. But he looked away too quickly for me to hold on to it. Amy has already been such a wonderful mentor to Lily, he added, smiling with that same patronizing tone that had grown more familiar over time. And I know she'll continue to support our new director in every way possible. Support. The word sliced through me. I was expected to support the woman who had taken my role, who hadn't earned a tenth of what I had built with blood and bone and burnout. I sat through the rest of the meeting like a ghost. I smiled. I nodded. I pretended to be okay. My hands stayed politely folded on my lap, but underneath, they trembled. As people filtered out of the room, offering congratulatory handshakes and praise to Lily, I stood up on legs that didn't feel like mine and returned to my office. The nameplate on my door still read Amy Hayes, Senior Operations Manager. It looked like a joke now. A relic. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it for a long second, trying to keep it together. The room smelled faintly of jasmine from the diffuser I'd brought from home. It had once been my sanctuary. Today, it felt like a cell. I glanced toward the wall where I had proudly hung my Employee of the Year plaques, 3 of them, one for each year I'd worked here. Each one now felt like a cruel reminder of loyalty that hadn't mattered. My phone buzzed on my desk. Joseph, hey, how did the big announcement go? Official yet? Official. I stared at the text until the words blurred. My fingers hesitated before replying. We'll talk tonight. The day dragged on, each hour a blur of smiling through clenched teeth and pretending nothing had shifted. But everything had shifted. I was no longer a rising star, I was just the old guard. The dependable one. The woman who was good at cleaning up messes but not innovative enough to deserve a promotion. At 5 p.m. sharp, I packed up, grabbed my coat, and headed to the parking lot. The air was heavy with late spring humidity. As I walked to my car, I felt every single minute of the past 3 years pressing against my chest. The things I had given up. The birthdays I had missed. The time I would never get back. And for what? For someone to look at me and say, Thanks for building this house. We'll let someone else live in it. But still, I hadn't cried. Not once. Not yet. I had always believed in professionalism, in grace, in holding your chin high even when it shakes. I drove home in silence. When I opened the door, the smell of lasagna drifted from the kitchen. Joseph, a sweet, wonderful Joseph, had made dinner. He was already at the table, 2 glasses of wine poured. The moment he saw my face, he stood. Amy? I shook my head, lowered my bag, and took the seat across from him. The words came slowly, then all at once. I told him everything, the announcement, the applause, the betrayal. How I'd smiled and clapped even as something in me cracked. By the time I finished, Joseph's wine sat untouched. His jaw was tight, hands balled into fists on the table. He gave it to Lily, he asked. After everything you've done? I nodded. He stood, reaching for his phone. I'm calling him. No, I grabbed his hand. This isn't your fight. Not yet. The truth was, I didn't know what came next. I only knew one thing for certain. I was done playing by rules written by people who never intended for me to win. The morning after the announcement, I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes, staring at rows of neatly pressed blouses and tailored slacks. For the first time in years, I didn't care what I wore to work. Eventually, I grabbed a simple black dress, professional, forgettable, and tied my hair back into a no-nonsense bun. My armor for the day. Walking into the office felt surreal. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, keyboards clicked, and the receptionist greeted me with the same cheerful tone she always used. But everything felt off. Like the floor plan of my life had shifted overnight, and I was the only one who noticed. At 9 a.m. sharp, Lily Monroe appeared at my door. She knocked politely, a bright smile on her face and a color-coded planner clutched in her manicured hands. Hi, Amy. I'm so excited to start learning from you. Uncle Arthur said you know this department better than anyone. Her tone was chipper, eager, and completely oblivious. I forced a tight smile. Come in. She stepped in like a high school intern on her first day, nervous, excited, overconfident all at once. Her heels clicked too loudly on the hardwood, her perfume was too sweet, and her confidence too blind. Let's start with the Morrison account, I said, gesturing to the chair across from me. They're our largest client and have been with us longer than I have. Losing them would affect nearly half our annual projections. She nodded earnestly, flipping open her planner to a fresh page. I watched her scribble Morrison, important $, in bubble letters. Oh God. For the next 2 hours, I walked her through our CRM platform, detailing the layered history of each key client, the people behind the titles, their quirks, their expectations. Lily's questions came fast and shallow. Wait, what's a rollover campaign? So we just upsell them? Do I need to know all the account codes or just the big ones? Each time, I took a deep breath and answered patiently. She wasn't evil. She wasn't malicious. She was just unprepared, a girl handed a job because of her last name, floundering in waters far deeper than she realized. By noon, my patience had thinned to a whisper. I went to the break room to heat up leftover soup. The room was empty, save for the hum of the microwave. I leaned against the counter, finally letting the exhaustion hit. I'd been talking all morning, giving away years of knowledge, my work, like it was disposable. That's when I heard it. Arthur's voice. Clear through the thin drywall that separated the break room from his office. The transition is going smoothly, he was saying, his voice full of forced cheer. Lily's picking things up fast. Another voice, Lily's, tentative. Are you sure Amy's okay with all this? She's been really nice. Too nice. I moved closer to the wall, breath caught in my throat. Amy's been dependable, Arthur replied. But we need innovation. Fresh ideas. She's good at maintaining the status quo, but that's not what we need anymore. Fresh ideas. Innovation. The same tired buzzwords people use when they want to justify discarding someone reliable. But, some clients specifically asked for her, Lily said softly. Arthur chuckled, and the sound made my stomach twist. That's exactly the problem. They're too comfortable with her. We need to shake things up, get them used to a new direction. And Amy's okay with that? She'll adapt. She always does. That's what makes her useful. Predictable. Reliable. She'll do whatever we ask because she doesn't have any other option. She's 42. She's not going anywhere. I didn't realize I was gripping the edge of the counter until my knuckles turned white. Predictable. Reliable. No other options. I wasn't even a person to them. I was a placeholder. A tool. A temporary bridge to carry them over until Lily was ready to lead. I walked back to my office in a daze. Lily was still there, flipping through a file folder like it was a magazine. Ready for the next one? She asked brightly. I sat down slowly. Sure. Let's talk about Jensen Logistics. But I wasn't really talking to her. Not anymore. I was watching, recording, taking stock. Every sentence I said, every shortcut I taught, every mistake I preemptively fixed, I was measuring my value. Not for them, but for me. The rest of the day blurred. Meetings. More training. Lily trailing me like a lost puppy with a Louis Vuitton leash. I kept it professional, kept it calm. But inside, a storm was building. That night, I didn't talk much over dinner. Joseph noticed. Still thinking about it? I nodded. He said I'm predictable. That I'll do whatever they ask. He frowned. What are you going to do? I looked at him across the candlelit table, the quiet hum of the dishwasher in the background. I'm going to prove him wrong. It was nearly midnight when I finally sat down at the kitchen table. The house was silent except for the ticking of the old wall clock. Joseph had gone to bed 2 hours earlier after kissing my forehead and whispering, "Take your time, sweetheart." I hadn't touched the tea he left me. Instead, I sat there, laptop open, cursor blinking on a blank document, like a heartbeat. Like it was waiting for me to catch up to the decision I had already made. I stared at the screen, fingers hovering over the keys, heart pounding not from fear, but from the terrifying clarity that comes when you finally stop waiting for someone else's permission. Then I began to type. Dear Arthur. Please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation from my position as Senior Operations Manager at Alden Ventures. My last day of employment will be Friday, March 15th, providing the standard 2 weeks' notice. The words flowed easily, not because I wasn't angry, but because I was done. Done pretending I still had something to prove. Done building someone else's legacy while mine collected dust in a forgotten drawer. Done letting loyalty be used as a leash. I kept the letter short. Professional. No emotional outbursts, no accusations, no sarcasm. Just the kind of calm, composed clarity that made people listen harder than any scream ever could. I signed it with my favorite pen, the one I'd used to write my first offer letter, back when I thought Alden Ventures would be the place where I would rise, thrive, belong. I printed the letter, slipped it into a clean white envelope, and laid it on the counter like it might burn a hole through the granite. Then I turned off the lights and went to bed, and for the first time in weeks, I slept. The next morning, I dressed with deliberate care. Navy blue power suit. Minimal makeup. Pearl earrings that once belonged to my grandmother. Strong, stubborn, and never afraid to walk away from a room that didn't value her. I arrived early. The office was still half empty, filled only with the hum of startup machines and the rustle of coffee cups. I placed the envelope dead center on my desk, where it would be impossible to ignore. Then I went about my routine as if the countdown hadn't already begun. At exactly 10 a.m., I picked it up and made the short walk down the hall to Arthur's office. His longtime secretary, Marie, looked up and smiled warmly. "Good morning, Amy. He's just finishing a call." "I'll wait," I said, returning her smile. Marie had always been kind. She baked cookies on people's birthdays, remembered everyone's pets' names, and never gossiped. But she also knew everything. The moment she saw the envelope in my hands, I saw her smile falter just slightly. She said nothing. Arthur's door opened. He stepped out, still mid-call, waving me in distractedly. "Yeah, get me those projections by end of day," he said into the phone. "And tell finance we'll circle back on the variance." "Thanks." He hung up and turned to me with the harried look of a man juggling too many things, but not nearly enough people. "What can I do for you, Amy?" he asked, already glancing at his tablet. "I've got a packed afternoon." I placed the envelope on his desk, gently but firmly. "This." He frowned and opened it. The moment his eyes scanned the first line, his entire body shifted. He straightened in his chair, mouth slightly open, eyes darting across the page. Then his face flushed. "You can't be serious." "I am." "This is some kind of negotiation tactic, right?" he said quickly, voice rising. "If this is about the promotion, I get it, you're upset, but let's talk about this. Maybe there's a different opportunity we can explore, new title, expanded role, more flexibility." "Arthur," I interrupted, calmly but clearly. He stopped mid-sentence, startled by the firmness in my tone. "This isn't about the title anymore," I said. "This is about respect. And the fact that I've finally realized I don't have any here." He leaned back in his chair, exhaling. "That's not true. You're valued. Your family." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "No, I'm not. Family doesn't ask you to train your replacement without telling you. Family doesn't dismiss your career as predictable behind your back. Family doesn't assume you'll stay simply because they think you have nowhere else to go." Arthur paled. "You heard that conversation?" "Every word." A silence stretched between us, heavy and long. Then he said, more softly, "I didn't mean it like that." "But you did," I replied. "And now you're realizing what it costs." I stood up, smoothing the front of my skirt. "You were right about one thing though," I added, turning toward the door. "I was predictable. I kept hoping loyalty would be rewarded. That someone would see what I built here. But I'm done waiting for recognition that was never coming." He sat back, silent. "You want to know what I want?" I asked, pausing one last time. "I want to work somewhere that sees my value before I have to fight for it." And then I walked out, without looking back. 2 weeks passed faster than I expected. Each morning I arrived early, head held high. I trained Lily with professionalism, documented every process, and tied up every loose end as if I were preparing to leave a legacy, because in a way, I was. My final days at Alden Ventures were quiet, almost eerie. People tiptoed around me like I was a living ghost. Some avoided eye contact. A few whispered condolences behind coffee mugs. And then there were others, like Margaret from accounting, who stopped by just to say, "You deserved better." I'd smile. I'd nod. But inside, I was already gone. On my final day, I walked out of the building without a word. No farewell party. No cake. Just a box of personal items in my arms and a strange, unexpected feeling fluttering inside me. Freedom. It was a strange kind of liberation, the kind that didn't roar, but whispered. I was no longer tied to a place that had quietly told me I wasn't enough. And then, barely 2 weeks into my career break, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. "Hello? Hi, is this Amy Hayes?" This is Rebecca Chin from Horizon Tech. I straightened in my chair. Yes, speaking. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. I was speaking with Daniel Morrison yesterday, and your name came up very highly, I might add. I felt my heart skip. Daniel. He had noticed I was gone. I'd love to talk more, I replied, forcing my voice to stay steady. Rebecca didn't waste time. We're currently hiring a regional operations director. 3 departments, oversight of key accounts. Daniel thinks you'd be a perfect fit. Less than an hour later, I had an email with job details. My jaw dropped. The salary was 30% higher than my last role. Benefits included stock options, wellness stipends, and something I'd never seen before, a monthly leadership coaching session. It wasn't just generous, it was visionary. The interviews moved swiftly. Over the next week, I met with team leads, department heads, and the CEO himself, Marcus Williams. In our final interview, Marcus sat across from me in a sunlit conference room with glass walls and bright green plants thriving in every corner. Why did you leave Alden Ventures? He asked directly. Daniel mentioned you were there for several years. I took a breath, then decided to go with the truth, not the bitterness, just the truth. I hit a ceiling that had nothing to do with my performance, I said. Loyalty without respect becomes servitude. I didn't want to stay in a place where merit wasn't the measure. Marcus smiled slightly. We don't believe in ceilings here. Only contributions. And just like that, I knew this was it. 3 days later, Rebecca called back with an offer that exceeded my best-case scenario. I accepted on the spot. My first day at Horizon Tech felt like stepping into a different universe. The office was filled with light, open spaces, quiet energy, and collaborative spirit. People actually smiled in meetings. No one seemed to compete for airtime. No hidden agendas, no stifling hierarchy, just clarity, structure, and a shared sense of purpose. My direct report, Sarah Martinez, had been temporarily covering the director role until I was hired. She could have been cold or territorial. Instead, she greeted me with genuine enthusiasm. I'm so glad you're here, she said, handing me a comprehensive transition file. Rebecca told me you're a miracle worker when it comes to complex clients. We're hoping you can help with the Anderson Group. They're a challenge. I opened the file, scanned their issues, delayed shipments, communication breakdowns, unmet expectations. It was déjà vu. And I was ready. That week, I dove in with everything I had. I listened. I observed. I didn't come in guns blazing, I came in with strategy. I rebuilt communication protocols, clarified accountability, and reassigned tasks to team members better suited for crisis management. We held a 3-hour meeting with Anderson's execs. I walked them through a recovery plan that was realistic, honest, and, most importantly, personalized. By the end of the call, they weren't just reassured. They were invested. We're not going anywhere, their CFO said. Actually, we might want to expand our contract. When I walked out of that meeting, Sarah clapped me on the back. That, she said, was incredible. By the end of my second week, I was being looped into high-level planning calls, asked to mentor rising managers, and consulted on client retention initiatives. People didn't just listen to my ideas, they built on them. In one of our Friday meetings, Marcus looked at me across the table and said, "You've been doing this for 3 years? And Alden never promoted you to director?" I shrugged with a small smile. Apparently, I was too predictable. He chuckled. Their loss. In my book, predictability in results is leadership gold. And that's when it hit me. Here, I wasn't being tolerated. I was being trusted. I wasn't the reliable backup. I was the leader. Every morning, walking into Horizon Tech, I felt that quiet thrum again, not anxiety, but energy. Purpose. The kind I hadn't felt in a long, long time. And as the days passed, I began to understand something deeper. I hadn't just left Alden Ventures. I had finally stepped into a version of myself that had been waiting to breathe. It started as whispers. A missed deadline here. A late reply there. Vendors calling twice, 3 times, and still not hearing back. A few clients began quietly exploring other options, sniffing around the market, testing the waters like prey sensing a weakened predator. Inside Horizon Tech, I had no reason to follow Alden Ventures' downfall. I was too busy leading new projects, helping the team streamline operations, and preparing for a series of high-stakes presentations. But news has a way of traveling through invisible channels. Old colleagues, client comments, whispers during networking events. I was at a quarterly logistics conference when I ran into Janet Mills, a procurement lead at Pacific Financial, once a mid-sized client of Alden Ventures. "Amy," she said, her voice rising with surprise and something else, relief. "We heard you moved to Horizon Tech. Honestly, good for you." "Thanks, Janet," I replied, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "How are things on your side?" She gave a tight-lipped smile. "Let's just say, things haven't been quite the same since you left. We've been waiting 3 weeks for a callback about a standard invoice discrepancy." 3 weeks? That was unheard of during my time. Before I could respond, she was pulled away by a colleague. But her words stayed with me like a low hum I couldn't ignore. 3 days later, I got a call from Daniel Morrison himself. "Amy, hope you don't mind me reaching out directly," he said. "I know you're busy. I have a professional question and a bit of a heads up." My stomach turned. "Of course. What's going on?" "We're probably ending our partnership with Alden Ventures by the end of this quarter." I leaned back in my chair, heart thudding. Morrison Industries was Alden's largest client, accounting for nearly a third of their annual revenue. If they left, it wouldn't just hurt, it would bleed. "I'm sorry to hear that. May I ask why?" Daniel sighed, a slow, frustrated sound. "Amy, remember how we used to have those monthly strategy calls? Where we'd tweak our forecasts based on real-time trends?" I nodded silently, even though he couldn't see. "Well, Lily, your replacement, missed the last 2 entirely. When she finally did call back, she couldn't answer basic questions about our inventory status. Every time we pressed for details, she said she'd get back to us. She didn't." I closed my eyes. I could already see it happening: disorganization, poor communication, people scrambling to fix things they didn't understand. "It gets worse," Daniel added. "Last week, we had a $2 million shipment stuck in the wrong warehouse." I called their office in a panic. You know what Lily said? "File a complaint through the formal channel. I'll look into it when I have time." I blinked. "What?" "That shipment was temperature sensitive. Perishable. We were hours away from losing the whole thing." She treated it like a paperwork issue. I exhaled slowly. "I'm so sorry, Daniel." "It's not your fault," he said. "But I thought you should know." When I called Arthur directly, he told me, and I quote, "If you can't adapt to our new leadership style, perhaps we're not the right fit anymore." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just sat there, stunned. Arthur had essentially invited his biggest client to walk away rather than admit he'd made a mistake. Daniel continued. "By the way, I don't regret a single word I said to Rebecca Chin. Recommending you to Horizon Tech was the best business advice I've given in years." After we hung up, I sat in silence, hands clasped in my lap, heart torn between a strange sense of vindication and a very real, very human sadness. Because I had loved that company once. Not Arthur. Not the politics. But the people. The team I built. The late nights, the breakthroughs, the small wins no one else noticed but me. I wasn't happy they were falling apart. I just wasn't surprised. The final blow came on a Thursday night. I was curled up on the couch in sweats, glass of wine in hand, reviewing slides for an upcoming board presentation when my phone buzzed. Margaret, accounting, Alden. I hadn't heard from her since the day I left. My heart pinched. Hey, Amy. I hope it's okay I called. I got your number from Joseph. Of course it's okay, I said. Are you all right? She hesitated. Honestly? No. There are rumors about layoffs. Word is that the Morrison account is gone, and a few others too. Some of us were scared. My throat tightened. Margaret, I had no idea. I'm so sorry. She rushed in, voice wobbling. It's not your fault. We all saw how they treated you. But, Amy, some of us have mortgages. Kids in college. We can't afford to start over. I glanced at my laptop screen, at the slide deck titled, New Client Integration Strategy, Phase 1. An idea sparked. Are you still open to new opportunities? I asked softly. I mean, sure. But I'm 58. Who's hiring accountants my age? I smiled. We are. That weekend, I brought her resume to Rebecca's office. Horizon Tech was growing fast. We needed experienced hands. Let me guess, Rebecca said, arching a brow as she skimmed Margaret's file. Another casualty of Arthur's reign? She's solid. Loyal. Smart. She just wants a place to contribute. Rebecca leaned back, thoughtful. Then let's bring her in. Within a month, Horizon Tech had signed 4 new clients, all former Alden Ventures accounts. Every presentation followed the same pattern. Companies frustrated by poor communication, broken promises, and delayed deliveries. I never bad-mouthed Alden. I didn't have to. The facts spoke for themselves. But the moment that hit hardest came from a simple sentence, spoken quietly by one of our new clients during a project kickoff. We came here because of Amy. I didn't know what to say. So I just nodded, heart full. That night, as I locked up my office, I stood by the window overlooking the city skyline. Lights blinking, roads bustling, people going about their lives. And I realized, this wasn't revenge. This wasn't payback. This was justice, not just for me, but for everyone who had ever been told they were replaceable. For everyone who stayed late, kept quiet, gave everything, and still got passed over. Arthur had built a company on loyalty he didn't return. And now, he was watching it crumble. Meanwhile, I was building something new, something better. And this time, it had my name on it. The invitation arrived on thick, ivory cardstock, embossed with a golden border and the Alden Ventures crest. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Arthur Alden requests the pleasure of your company at the annual awards dinner. I read it 3 times. Joseph found me in the kitchen later that night, the card still in my hands. You're not going, are you? He asked, reading over my shoulder. I think I am, I said, more to myself than to him. He blinked. Amy, why? After everything? I looked up, heart steady. Because I'm not the same woman who left that company in tears. I want to see who I've become. The event was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown, glittering chandeliers, too many forks on the table, polite laughter echoing off marble floors. It was the same venue where I had once helped organize logistics for this very evening. I used to stand at the back of the room, clipboard in hand, making sure the mic worked and the desserts arrived on time. But tonight, I walked in through the front entrance wearing emerald green silk, hair swept back, heels clicking confidently with every step. I wasn't there to blend in. Rebecca insisted on coming. Moral support, she said. I knew better. She wanted to see the empire that let me go. The cocktail hour was awkward. Former colleagues approached with stiff smiles, their eyes darting sideways, unsure of how to greet me. Some hugged me like long-lost family. Others looked like they'd seen a ghost. Lily, radiant as ever, stood near Arthur's table in a fitted navy dress, flanked by executives I barely recognized. She didn't approach me. Tom from accounting found me near the bar. Amy. Wow. You look amazing. Thanks, Tom. We all miss you. Things haven't really been the same since you left. I raised an eyebrow. How's everyone adjusting? He hesitated. Margaret landing that position at Horizon Tech? Honestly, it's inspired a few of us to start looking too. Sometimes you don't realize you've settled until you see someone else refuse to. Before I could respond, the lights dimmed and the dinner began. Arthur took the stage, looking noticeably older. His hair was thinner. His voice carried a strain I didn't remember from before. Welcome, everyone, he began. This has been a challenging but educational year for Alden Ventures. We've learned the importance of adaptation. Of recognizing talent, wherever it may be. His eyes swept the room and for the briefest moment, landed on mine. We both held the gaze. This year, we're introducing a new award. The Excellence in Leadership Recognition. This honor goes to someone who may no longer be with us, but whose legacy continues to shape how we do business. He paused. The room stilled. Amy Hayes, would you please come to the stage? The applause that followed was hesitant at first, then grew as others joined in. I didn't move immediately. For a second, I was back in that conference room, the one where they clapped for Lily. But this time, the applause was for me. Rebecca nudged me gently. Go on. This is your moment. I stood. Walked to the stage. Step by step, calm and unshaken. Arthur met me halfway, extending a crystal award that sparkled beneath the ballroom lights. Amy, he said, your dedication to excellence and your commitment to our clients set a standard that continues to inspire our team. I took the microphone, heart steady. Thank you, I began, my voice clear. Working at Alden Ventures taught me many things, about business, leadership, and loyalty. The room quieted. I've learned that loyalty is valuable. But loyalty without respect becomes exploitation. That hard work matters, but only when it's recognized. And sometimes, the most courageous thing you can do is to walk away from what no longer serves your growth. I paused. The silence was thick. Uncomfortable for some. Affirming for others. I'm grateful for my time here, because it led me to where I am now, a place where merit matters more than politics, where ideas rise on their own merit, not on last names or connections. I looked out over the sea of faces, some supportive, others unreadable. Lily stared down at her hands. Arthur looked like stone. To my former colleagues, remember this, you have more power than you think. You don't have to wait for someone else to validate your worth. Sometimes, you have to walk away to be seen. I handed the microphone back and turned to leave the stage. The applause followed behind me. Not everyone clapped, but enough did to let me know the message had landed. Back at our table, Rebecca smiled. Damn, she whispered. That was a masterclass. As we were gathering our coats to leave, Arthur approached. Amy. Could I have a word? Rebecca gave me a look, you okay, before excusing herself with grace. Arthur and I stood face to face, for the first time since my resignation. That was quite a speech, he said. It was honest. He nodded slowly, the lines around his mouth deeper than I remembered. I suppose I deserved that. I said nothing. We're restructuring the leadership team, he added. If you ever wanted to come back. Arthur, stop, I said gently but firmly. He blinked. 6 months ago, maybe part of me would have wanted to prove something. But not anymore. I don't need your title. Or your permission. He swallowed. The company's struggling. I looked him in the eye. The company's struggling because you built it on loyalty you didn't return. You made decisions based on bloodlines, not capability. And now the people you overlooked are thriving elsewhere. He looked away. I hope Alden Ventures finds its footing, I said sincerely. But that chapter's closed for me. I picked up the award, heavier than it looked, and walked out. As Rebecca and I crossed the parking lot, she looped her arm through mine. So, she said with a grin. How does it feel to have the last word? I smiled, something blooming inside me. Peace. Closure. Power. Like freedom. The night after the awards dinner, I placed the crystal trophy on the bookshelf in my home office, right next to a framed photo from my first day at Horizon Tech. 2 objects. 2 stories. One represented everything I had endured. The other represented everything I had become. I sat on the couch with a warm cup of tea in hand, still wearing my heels. I hadn't wanted to take them off. Somehow, standing tall still felt necessary, even now. Joseph came into the room, eyes searching my face. So, he asked. It was perfect, I said. And for the first time in years, I meant it. The following Monday, I returned to work with a different energy, not the determined fire of someone proving herself, but the steady calm of someone who knew her value. Rebecca popped into my office before our morning meeting, holding a stack of folders. 3 more client inquiries, she said, setting them down. All former Alden Ventures accounts. All mentioned your name. I raised an eyebrow. Still? Word travels fast when you treat people right, she replied. And apparently, when you don't. As I flipped through the folders, I noticed something interesting. These weren't just clients jumping ship. They were loyal clients, some of whom had stayed with Alden for over a decade. Suddenly realizing they deserved better. One had written in their initial email, "We're looking for consistency and leadership. Amy Hayes seems to offer both." I leaned back in my chair, the weight of those words settling over me, not as a burden, but as confirmation. It wasn't just about leaving a toxic workplace. It was about creating a ripple effect, a reminder that competent, loyal people didn't have to settle. We signed all 3 accounts within 2 weeks. Some nights, I'd get calls from former colleagues, quiet check-ins, hesitant hellos. Margaret had fully transitioned into her new role at Horizon and was thriving. I haven't felt this respected in years, she told me one afternoon. Thank you for believing I still had something to offer. Another call came from Tom. I don't know how to say this without sounding desperate, he said, laughing nervously, but, are you guys hiring in finance? We might be, I said. And I'll put in a good word. It wasn't revenge. I wasn't trying to poach. But when people reached out looking for dignity, I wasn't going to turn them away. Somewhere deep inside, I knew that Arthur must have realized what was happening. Not because anyone told him, but because it's impossible to ignore the slow erosion of something you once believed unshakable. He'd lost his biggest clients. And now, quietly, one by one, he was losing his people. 3 months later, I was sitting in a leadership retreat hosted by Horizon's executive team. The theme was building value-driven culture. Around the room, VPs and directors shared ideas about sustainability, innovation, and long-term strategy. When it was my turn to speak, I stood and said, retention isn't just about salaries or perks. It's about respect. It's about showing people they matter before they have to beg to be seen. The room went still. Then heads began to nod. I wasn't just repeating corporate jargon. I was living proof of it. That afternoon, Marcus, our CEO, pulled me aside. You've got something, he said, folding his arms. You lead without ego. Your people trust you. And your clients stay because you listen. I smiled. Thank you. We're restructuring some divisions, he continued. Would you consider heading a new cross-departmental initiative? It would be a step toward executive leadership. I didn't even have to think. Yes, I said. And just like that, I stepped into a future that had once been closed off to me, not because I wasn't qualified, but because someone else couldn't see past their biases. Now, I was building something that couldn't be taken away by a surname or family ties. I was building legacy, not just performance. One Sunday afternoon, Joseph and I were walking in the park when we passed a father and daughter flying a kite. She kept letting it dip too low, yanking the string at the wrong moments. He coached her gently, smiling every time it caught wind again. "Why are you smiling?" Joseph asked. "I think I used to be that kite," I said quietly. Always trying to stay up while someone else held the string. He stopped walking. "And now?" "Now," I said, squeezing his hand, "I'm the one steering." I no longer looked back at my time at Alden with bitterness. I looked back with clarity. I remembered every moment I was overlooked, every comment dismissed, every time someone said, "Maybe next time." I remembered being asked to train the person who replaced me. I remembered the heartbreak. But I also remembered what came after. The interviews that welcomed me. The clients that followed me. The team that trusted me. The boss who saw me. I remembered how it felt to say no, to walk away from a title that wasn't worth the cost. And more than anything, I remembered the moment I realized I didn't need their approval. I just needed mine. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming the person you were always meant to be, without apology, without permission, and without looking back. In the story of Amy Hayes, we witness a woman whose unwavering loyalty and tireless dedication were met not with gratitude, but with betrayal. For years, she gave her all, working late nights, mentoring others, and building something meaningful only to be replaced by someone who had done none of the work but held the right last name. But what makes Amy's journey remarkable isn't just the injustice she faced, it's how she responded. She didn't lash out. She didn't seek revenge. Instead, she chose dignity. She walked away from a place that no longer saw her worth and had the courage to start over, even when others thought she had no options left. And in doing so, she didn't just rebuild her career, she rediscovered her voice, her confidence, and her value. Her story reminds us that loyalty is only noble when it's mutual, that courage often looks like quiet resolve, and that truth doesn't need to shout, it stands tall on its own. Amy's triumph wasn't loud or vindictive, it was rooted in self-respect and clarity. In the end, the lesson she teaches us is simple, yet powerful. You are not meant to shrink yourself to fit into spaces that refuse to grow with you. Sometimes, walking away is not weakness, it is the bravest declaration of your worth. We don't always get the apology we deserve. But we can give ourselves the life we do.